I ask consent that this following statement be placed in a separate part of the record.
Without objection.
Today, the Senate's going to take up the CHIPS Act of 2022. It's critical to our economy and national security. It'll provide billions of dollars to boost our domestic semiconductor manufacturing industry. In 1990, the U.S. produced 37% of the world's semiconductors, 1990. Today, 12%. Semiconductors are used in everything from vacuum cleaners, refrigerators, cell phones, cars, fighter jets. And the ongoing global shortage of microchips has led us to supply chain constraints on goods, higher prices, layoffs, and a great dependency on foreign suppliers. For generations, my state of Illinois has been a leader in auto manufacturing. This includes companies like Stellantis, which has a plant in Belvidere, Illinois. Unfortunately, this plant has had to force shutdowns and layoffs in recent years, not because they lack customers, they lack chips. The global shortage of semiconductors has forced Stellantis to slash its workforce by more than 70% over the past 3 years. A similar story at Ford's Chicago assembly plant, repeatedly forced to stop production and lay off workers because of a shortage of chips. This isn't just an Illinois problem. U.S. automakers are building an estimated 3 million fewer vehicles than projected this year because of semiconductor shortage. The global chip shortage and resultant slowdown in auto manufacturing has driven up the cost of cars and trucks. A new car costs 17% more today than a year ago. Talk about dealing with inflation. When it comes to the cost of vehicles, you're dealing with the shortage in semiconductor chips. Across America, layoffs, closed production lines, long waits and high prices for cars, appliances, and other basics are evidence of the urgent need to invest in our domestic manufacturing industry and domestic production of semiconductors. If we fail to make these investments, American workers and consumers will pay the price. And this isn't only about our nation's economy, it's also about our nation's security. Many U.S. defense systems and platforms rely on foreign-made chips for their performance, and semiconductors are particularly critical for the next generation of defense technology. Most of the chips that power U.S. defense systems today are made in Asia. Think about that for a minute. We are dependent on Asia for the chips that we need to keep America safe. We've seen what a pandemic can do to supply chains. Think about how military conflict could end up with supply chains, global supply chains, in danger. Imagine if China, for instance, decided to deliberately withhold microchips from a nation to weaken their national defense. Rebuilding America's microchip production is about defending our nation and our allies in a dangerous world. Now, I understand some have concern about the subsidies in the bill, framing them as corporate giveaways. It's true that many of the chip makers who would benefit from this bill are profitable, or they've moved production overseas despite receiving previous federal funding. But in this bill are incentives to bring microchip production back to the United States, and they are absolutely necessary for us to compete with other nations that are trying to lure chip makers away from the U.S. The bill also includes guardrails to protect and promote production in the United States, such as prohibiting the manufacture of certain chips in countries of concern like China. Ultimately, this bill makes strategic investment to boost our domestic supply chain, counter the threat posed by other countries like China and Russia, and help American consumers. I urge my colleagues to pass the CHIPS Act without delay.